You're trying to build a sound system that doesn't just look impressive on paper, but actually fills the room with bass you can feel while still being easy to live with day to day. You've probably read a dozen spec sheets that shout about 200 watts RMS and 13.5-inch driver and wondered whether any of that translates into something reliable, not a box that rattles your windows at the worst possible moment. That hesitation is real, spending a few $100s on a sub that turns out to be too boomy for a modest living room, or, on the flip side, one that never gets loud enough for a dedicated home theater setup, is a risk most of us want to avoid. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The SVS PB4000 is the company's flagship model in a sleek piano gloss black finish, and it's positioned as a brute force sub that can also be surprisingly gentle when you dial it back. In practice, the biggest question is whether that combination of power and refinement actually works in the kinds of spaces most of us have, and whether the added convenience of the SVS app makes the whole thing feel like a hassle-free upgrade or just another gadget to learn. First, let's talk about the kind of room where this sub starts to make sense. A 13.5-inch driver with a ported cabinet is designed to move a lot of air, which translates to deep, room-filling low frequencies. In a medium-sized living room, say, around 300 square feet with typical two-story construction, you'll notice the difference the moment you play a movie with an explosion or a bass-heavy track. The sub punches through the usual wall vibrations that a smaller 10-inch unit would struggle with, and the ported design helps it achieve those lower frequencies without needing the extreme power that a sealed box would demand. That power is where the 200 watts RMS rating comes in. It's not a marketing gimmick. It means the internal STA1200D DSP amplifier can sustain high output for extended periods without overheating. In real-world terms, you can turn the volume up for a big screen action night and the sub will stay tight, without the wobble that cheap subwoofers develop when they're pushed beyond their limits. The peak rating of over 4000 watts is the kind of headroom that lets you hit those short, dynamic bursts like a low-frequency rumble in a car chase without the bass falling flat. Now, the convenience factor. SVS has built an app that works on both iOS and Android, letting you adjust volume, phase, and crossover points from your phone or tablet. Most people who have tried it say the interface feels more like a remote control than a complex EQ suite. The real benefit shows up when you're trying to blend the sub with existing speakers in a room that has an uneven layout. You can walk around with your phone, listen to the bass from different spots, and make small tweaks until it feels even. It's not a substitute for a proper calibration microphone, but for the average DIY homeowner it's a practical shortcut that saves a trip to a dealer's showroom. Who should consider the PB4000? If you already have a mid-range or high-end floor-standing speaker setup and you're missing that feel-the-rumble component, this sub is a natural partner. It also makes sense for small to medium home theaters where you want the cinematic impact without having to dedicate a whole wall to a massive subwoofer. People who host regular movie nights, enjoy bass-heavy music genres like EDM or hip-hop, or simply want a more immersive gaming experience will notice the difference right away. The piano gloss black finish also means it can sit on a shelf or against a wall without looking out of place, which is a small but nice aesthetic bonus for style-conscious rooms. On the other side of the ledger, there are buyers who should probably look elsewhere. If your primary listening space is a tiny apartment under 150 square feet, the PB4000 will likely overwhelm the room, causing excessive vibration in walls and possibly annoying neighbors. The sheer output can be a bit much, and dialing it down enough to be pleasant often defeats the purpose of buying a high-power sub in the first place. Similarly, if you're on a strict budget, the price tag of this flagship model may not justify the incremental bass improvement over a more modest 10-inch sealed sub that's half the cost. Lastly, if you're a purist who insists on using a dedicated hardware DSP or a professional calibration microphone, the app-only control scheme might feel limiting compared to other high-end models that integrate with external processors. Let's get into some practical strengths that matter after the box arrives. The first is integration ease. The PB4000 comes with a standard LFE, low-frequency effects, input that plugs directly into most AV receivers, and the power cable is thick enough to handle the continuous draw without overheating. Most users report that the sub powers on with a single click and the default settings are already decent for a typical living room. You can start with the app, fine-tune the crossover to match your main speakers, and you're good.